Have you ever had a boss that was just so terrible to you that made you not want to come into work? Well, years ago, I was actually shocked to learn that I was actually that boss. I began my career in management and leadership nearly 30 years ago, so some of you weren't even born yet. At the time, I really wasn't given a lot of advice. One piece of advice that I was told was, remember, your employees are not your friends, so keep your emotions out of work. I was like, okay, interesting. Gentleness and kindness were signs of weakness, and they would erode my authority and my ability to lead. Granted, it didn't feel right, but the books that I was reading, the people that I were talking to, they were all sharing that same thing with me. The leaders that I had as examples during that time were all men. Their style was very domineering, aggressive, command and control, top-down leadership style. So that's what I'm seeing. As many women did during that era, we thought we needed to be like that. So let's put on that facade. So armed myself to operate in a world without emotion, put on a power suit, if any of you remember those, and I ventured out into this world determined to be successful. I was cold, overly direct, harsh, really some days just downright mean. And I was using it all as this barrier from my emotions. So if I acted this way, I could keep everyone at a distance. I had no idea how to lead. I didn't know the right questions to ask. So instead of just stopping, I micromanaged. Well, that certainly showed that I knew more than everyone else. I didn't take any feedback. I certainly didn't listen to what my employees were saying to me. And I never showed them in any way that I cared. It was terrible. I was very lonely and I was isolated, but I had also been told that leadership was lonely. So I was probably doing something right. Strangely enough, that was supported when I won the Employee of the Year award. And I won some other great accolades for my great leadership style, which is just terrible looking back at that. And so I was successful. Like, that's what I thought. Like, I'm doing this right. And so having that success and having that supported made me venture out and go look for some new things. And so I ventured out to a new career. My new role was at Microsoft, and this was the 90s. So Microsoft was a very different place. This was, if you lived in the area, then the 90s was, you wanted to be at Microsoft, like huge stock grants, the most amazing parties ever. And it was just like, this was gonna be my ticket to success all the way. But what I didn't know when I entered into that role was I was about to meet myself face to face. So my new manager, really, really smart guy, hired directly out of college, engineer. Very quickly I understood he had the same learning education around being a leader that I had. So I was terrified to make a mistake. I would read an email over and over and over again, and I'd hit send, and then I'd go back to the sent mail, and I'd look again with this sick feeling like, did I make a mistake? If you made a mistake, he shared it with the entire team. It was a learning opportunity for us all. It was horrible. If you went and you asked for help, he would tell you, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. It's like, but you never had anyone to talk to. And worse, you got called into the office. Back to that overly direct, just not even picking up on people's body language, like how they were responding to what he was saying. And then an email that as you read it, like you needed to take it to therapy with you to get over it. And there was one time in particular that's really pivotal in my mind, and we're in this room, there's a lot of people that had come together for this team meeting. And he says, you know, if we just hired better people, like our sales team is super inexperienced and they don't know what we're doing. So if we hired better people, we wouldn't have these problems. And I had this moment of thinking, I am gonna pass out. I am sitting across the table from these inexperienced salespeople, and they're bright red. And one of the men has tears in his eyes, and I'm thinking, these people will never recover from this. whether it's the perception of the other people in the room that don't know them, or how they feel about their own careers. And this continued for a while. I eventually left on stress leave. I did not know how to be successful in this environment. I didn't know where to get help, and I just completely avoided it. And it was during that time when I'm at home in the quiet thinking, well, there has to be a better way. And then it hit me with this horror of, this is how I had led my team and how I had treated my people. And how embarrassing, that shameful moment of, I cannot believe that I became something so different than who I really was because I had this title slapped onto me. You know, growing up, I had been the friend that gathered everyone together, and I made sure everyone was included, and I led them through whatever we were going to do, and we all had fun, and that was really important to me. So how did I get like so far away from that person who I authentically was, and how much I cared for people and the emotion that was involved in that? And I just kept going back to, there has to be a better way, but I didn't know. And literally during that era, there wasn't a lot of stuff about leadership in a different way. It was about being strong and, you know, the struggle of power and how do you climb the ladder. And so I just thought, I can't do this. So without having an answer, I completely avoided. I never went back to the role at Microsoft. There were actually several months I could not drive down 156, which those of you that are familiar, down the center of Microsoft campus. I would start to break out in sweats. I couldn't do it. And so I just thought, I can't be in the corporate world anymore. So I thought, well, I need to do something. So I went and took a temp job, something completely different. I decided I'd be a holiday designer. I had gone to art school, so there was this whole idea that if I went and did something creative, I would feel good again and I would have some purpose. So 5-week assignment, worked with a team of people. We designed Christmas trees, wreaths, all the things that you see like in the malls. So there was a lot of work in a really short period of time. There were some really challenging clients, people that didn't state really what they wanted, didn't know what they were going to expect. There were physical challenges, wearing cherry pickers on top ladders. People typically get injured. And at the end of the day, you're like physically exhausted, you're dirty, you're also covered in glitter. Everything during that period of my life, including my pets and my husband, had glitter on them. But it was a really interesting period of time for me because I found myself just helping others. So I was helping people figure out, how do we do this better? I took on the difficult clients and I made sure that they were heard and that they were happy. And when we were so pushed to the point of exhaustion, I was the cheerleader. I was the one that got everyone through that night and that we'd be ready to come back the next day. So at the end of that 5 weeks, I was like, this was so terrific. Like, what do I do next? And the manager came to me and said, I want you to stay and I want you to manage the team next year. And I laughed. I was like, you don't want that. Horrible manager. Like, I love these people. They'll all hate me. It'll be a complete failure. Like, this is not what we're going to do. And he listened to me super patiently. And then he said, but that's what you have been doing. You have been leading and managing this group just without the authority. And I was like, okay, maybe there was a little bit of truth, but still, like, I know I'm a bad manager. I said, okay, so we were successful. All of our clients did. They were happy and they all were planning to return the next year. Nobody got hurt, which I later learned was the first year that there had been no injuries. And the group was all really excited to come back after we had the holiday break, and that's when you take everything down, and it's actually not super exciting, but people were happy to do that. So I actually accepted that role reluctantly, and I stayed with that team for several years. And I spent that time learning, how do you build a healthy company culture? And once you've built it, how do you maintain it and continue to let that grow? How do you enable teams? And how do you help people find their best self? And really, how do you create a work environment that people want to show up to every day and can show up and be themselves? And it was such a blessed experience for me to realize that when you took away that title of manager and I had that opportunity to just lead naturally and to be who I was, I could be successful. So again, it's like that whole thing about finding a different way and wanting to share that. So I eventually did leave the Christmas shop, and still very fond in my memories. But I left and I went and I started a management consulting firm knowing that there was a greater need, and particularly when you think about it at the enterprise level for a lot of these organizations, and became a certified coach as part of that. And that's work that I still do today, and I do that work with companies like Microsoft and Google and Amazon, and then a lot of small companies. And it's really empowering and special time for me. And if I can leave this group with anything, I would say the thing that I have learned over my years is what matters most to people is just how they are made to feel by the organizations that they work for and the managers and leaders that they have. It is rarely an appeal to our minds that creates our greatest achievements. It is almost always an appeal to our hearts. Thank you.